me, one of the coolest things about the Race and Rescue line is that it's taken pre-existing emergency vehicles from past pieces of Cars media and given them brand new variants, now with Race and Rescue designs. Instead of just your typical Radiator Springs characters and racers, this line went a bit further with some other additional characters in the form of Adam Rodriguez, Morgan Martins, and for some reason Kathy Copter, who's not an emergency vehicle. She's a reporter, but still, I think it still kind of works and folds in pretty well with the other items here in the line. While they could have easily just made original characters, I think it's really cool to see that they instead went the route of taking obscure characters from the movies and other locations and adding them in here. I think that worked really, really well, and it's provided us with easily one of the most anticipated and interesting releases of the year with Race and Rescue Morgan Martins. Beyond the fact that this is an ambulance being sold as a regular single, which in and of itself is fascinating and pretty cool, what makes this item so hotly anticipated with collectors is the fact that it's a variant of Morgan Martins, a character who was previously released in 2017 as a Super Chase. This right here is the original Morgan Martins from Cars 3, and as a Super Chase, it was limited to only a few thousand pieces. Morgan getting a Race and Rescue variant means that more collectors than ever can now receive a variant of this character, and a lot of people have been really excited to get their hands on a Morgan Martins. If you can't get the Morgan Martins, at least you can get a version of him. It's just something super cool and unique seeing this Super Chase get a new variant. Beyond that, there are other exciting things about this item, like the fact that this is the first time we've ever received character artwork for Morgan Martins, because back in 2017 we didn't have artwork, and also the fact that he's, again, an ambulance as a single. A lot to talk about with this guy. Hello everybody, and welcome back to another review, and to another Race and Rescue diecast review. Today, I am very excited to be taking a look at the one and only Morgan Martins. This being an item that exists is crazy. If you told me we would one day get an expanded universe Morgan Martins variant, I probably wouldn't believe you. But this is a really interesting and unique item. I do want to address easily one of the biggest talking points about this item, other than it being a Super Chase getting a new variant. That, of course, being the fact that Morgan was shrunken down for this release. Since 2023, unfortunately, deluxes have been missing from the Cars diecast line. And while that has been annoying, there have also been some silver linings, as it's given us characters that would definitely be deluxes before, like Doug Crankle and the Dinosaur Cars, but now in single form. Morgan Martins and Red in the Race and Rescue line, as I'm sure you're all already aware, were shrunken down from their original deluxe releases to instead fit in a single pack. And you know, it's not too bad. I was honestly expecting him, and especially Red, to be much smaller. It's not as substantial. Obviously, there are some parts where he is quite a bit downscaled, but honestly, you know, I appreciate Mattel doing this instead of not giving us these characters at all. Obviously, I would much prefer if the deluxe line simply came back, or even if they made Race and Rescue Morgan and Red in 2-packs like they've done with regular Red for the past few years, or made them online multi-pack exclusives. I would take any of that over them being downsized. But as far as it goes, I'll take a downsized version of the character over not getting them at all. And he looks just fine. It's just the fact that there is a bigger Morgan out there kind of puts an awkward dent on the reputation of this item. Regardless, I'm excited to take a look at him as his own standalone item. And let's be real, if you look at this and you look at Red, you can see they made them as big as they possibly could while still making them singles. You know, this is a very large item, and it's crazy to think that this is the same price as another regular single. Let me just grab someone right now. Cal. These two items are the same price. Like, let's be real. If Morgan were this size and the deluxe line were still around, this still would have been a deluxe. So, again, there is a silver lining to these items being scaled down. While I wish it weren't happening, while I really, really wish the deluxe line were still a thing, at the very least, we're getting large characters for a cheaper price. We, of course, have Morgan's artwork here, which is really trippy to see since, again, this is a character who's been around since 2017 but has never received artwork before. Hopefully someday we could see Morgan's regular artwork. Just Photoshop this one to to be his design from Cars 3. I'm sure there are probably fans that have already done that. We've got that beautiful Race and Rescue packaging. Really love how it looks with all the sparks and fire designs. Logo there, new for 2025 there, and the name tag down there, in case you needed confirmation that, yes, this guy is, in fact, Morgan Martins. On the back of the package, you can see GF Corvette, Sally, Luigi and Guido, Red, and Jackson Storm. I have reviewed none of these items yet. My stores have been pretty bad when it comes to Race and Rescue items, other than the mini racers and color changers. I've only so far found McQueen, Chick Hicks, and Sarge. Luckily, yesterday, alongside Morgan, I also found Jeff and Sally, who I'll be reviewing throughout this week. I'll be alternating. One day I'll review a Race and Rescue car, then one of the other items I have, then a Race and Rescue car, then another item, etc., etc. Going off the poll that I left you guys, Jeff will be next, and then Sally. But hopefully I can get some of these other guys soon. And I'm still missing Mater. I never found Mater, which is really frustrating. But now, let's get Morgan Martins out of the package and take a closer look at this item. You know, it's hard with an item like this, because this is a downscaled item. It's difficult to not immediately go, boo, he's smaller than he used to be. That's so frustrating. You gotta remember and understand that Morgan Martins here is a victim of circumstance, right? He's a victim of the deluxe line not existing right now for whatever reason, unfortunately. So it is hard. It's hard to know what the right thing to say about this item is. Because I'd love to just criticize that he's small, but I know that there are reasons behind that are completely out of the control of, it's much bigger than, oh, this item has a wrong decal. It's the deluxe line does not exist right now, and because of that, this item had to be made smaller. So I'm going to give him leeway because of that, obviously. But I will say, well, Morgan, I mean, he looks a little silly being smaller, and while he is smaller, they did a pretty good job at shrinking down the original item. The main issue I have is the front, where the proportions are completely different. Right? There's shrinking down, and then there's squashing. And since this item first started leaking, he just always looked so squashed to me. The original Morgan definitely has a longer front here and a thinner front, and for whatever reason they didn't do that here. You can see they really kind of, I don't know, they mess with his proportions in a weird way. And I understand obviously making him smaller, like I was just saying, but I don't get why they couldn't have just made the front here a bit thinner like the original was. I'm also not as big a fan of this facial expression, and if you want to get super nitpicky, his bumper's a different color. Who cares? I mean, that one's a pretty small one. And if you want to get even more nitpicky, if you look at his artwork, it is silver on here, so that is intentionally part of the design. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of, would you call it, the cab? I just think it looks really awkwardly squashed, while the rest of the item was downscaled pretty well. Even the mirrors are a really good, smaller version of those pre-existing mirrors, and the decals themselves, the designs on him, and these parts in the mold, the headlights, the grille, the mouth, and bumper, they are all pretty good adaptations that just make this guy, Morgan Martins, but a bit smaller. I appreciate they didn't skimp out on the details just because he was smaller. Everything that's on the original Morgan Martins is still here, including all the lights here, which are just as detailed, with a bit of different graphic design that makes them look a bit more like an illustration compared to the more, I don't know, there's a bit more lighting, more reflection on that original decal compared to this one. He has a bit of a difference here. Actually, a bit more detail with these lights, which now have a black outline that wasn't previously present. And when you move on to the side, you can continue to see that, yeah, these guys are basically one-to-one when it comes to the details on them. All of the things that are on this Morgan are going to be on this Morgan. All of the lights are in the right place. The doors are in the right place. The doors even have the exact same very unique hinge design. And is the door handle on there? Yeah, the door handle's on there. This is a incredibly accurate, smaller version of the character. And with the exception of that front, I really have no complaints. They did a great job. And if this is what we have to have, at the very least, it is insanely accurate to that original version. I also really like how this item, they could have easily made a new ambulance character and slapped the name Morgan Martins on it, but I really like and really appreciate how they went out of their way to make the designs be similar, to not just make this an ambulance named Morgan Martins. No, you can clearly tell this is a variant of Morgan Martins. This stripe here on the side with the Race Division 17 logo, the rescue division he works for the Piston Cup, is basically emulated here with a red stripe instead that now has the Race and Rescue logo. The side is completely different, but the top is once again very clearly based on that original Morgan Martins with Race Division 17 copied. I really like the reference to that race division he works for. I appreciate that still being on there, although now it's in a much darker blue to better match the Race and Rescue color scheme, which now takes over the Piston Cup medical logo. I really just like that they still kept Morgan's designs. Again, that side is different, but I think that really worked, and that makes perfect sense, and it also matches the other Race and Rescue items, most of whom have these stripes going on the back corner. They're all in different colors from item to item, and Morgan definitely has one of the best ones. The Race and Rescue characters employ a lot of different color schemes, and Morgan with simple rescue reds and yellows is easily one of the best looking ones, I think. He even keeps the Race Division 17 logo underneath his lights. Rescue here taken, very similarly from other cars in the line, and he also has these very nice red wheels, which are, yes, the same wheels as his original diecast. You even have the stepping board, this little metal piece that looks to have another light on it next to the stepping board. Again, it is an incredibly accurate readaptation of the character. I wish this part stuck out a bit more like it does on the original. It is still a three-dimensional piece, but I wish it stuck out a bit more. On the back, if you really want a good look at the scale difference between these two, there are the backs, which continue to be, again, the same character. I love how similar these are. I love it. When I first saw this item, I wasn't expecting them to go that far with making them similar, and I really appreciate that. They keep back writing the Race and Rescue logos here instead of the medical logos. Does he have the same license plate? He does. RSQ Medic lives. And of course, this down here is recolored to match the Race and Rescue coloring. I think I'm just in awe that they, number one, made a new Morgan Martins, and number two, made a downscaled Morgan Martins that still looks exactly like Morgan Martins. I genuinely wasn't expecting it to be this accurate to the original. You even have Race and Rescue there instead of Rescue. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. Finally, there is a look at the base. As you probably expected, front is metal, back is all plastic, and you can actually see the screws are exposed there, which, pretty similar to that original. Obviously, having a shrunken down version of a pre-existing character is not ideal, but for what it is, it works incredibly well. And if you take the original Morgan Martins out of the picture, this guy works just fine, and I'd say honestly scales pretty decently with other Cars characters. It's not super perfect, super ideal, and in universe, of course, cars are supposed to fit in the back of ambulances, and that's not going to happen unless you're like Luigi. And even then, Luigi may not fully, be able to fit based on where the wheels are and all that. But if you want to get super technical, most ambulances other than Morgan Martins in the Cars diecast line are much smaller than they would be. The original Morgan is a really, really solid diecast who actually was designed to, kind of be the size that a racer could fit, and obviously the doors don't open or anything. But yeah, if you take the original Morgan out of the picture, I think this is a perfectly fine ambulance diecast. If you include the original Morgan, obviously you got to keep in mind, yes, this needed to be downscaled because we don't have deluxes right now, but I think it's a perfectly fine item for what it is. I'm very, very, very happy with how this turned out design-wise. Obviously, it will never escape the fact that it's a downscaled version of the character, but for what it is, as a new version of an insanely obscure character who previously only released as a Super Chase, I'm very happy with this item, and I think it's a super cool one. Anyway, guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. Hopefully, one day we see the deluxe line come back, but until then, if the downscaled items continue to be as good as this Morgan Martins is, I'll be pretty content with that. I'll see you guys next time. Bye now.